What's going on, everybody? Big Kev from Big Kev's World back at you with another video. And again, I hope everyone had a great Christmas and a great New Year's. And I got a thing on Tuesday. It'll be inside the squared circle again, but this time it won't be an interview. But me and superstar Xavier Michaels from the wrestling show, will be in the house on Tuesday at 7 p.m. Central, where we'll be discussing the 70s, the 80s, kind of the 60s, 70s, 80s, discussing the golden era, we're going to be discussing the territories, whether or not we think the territories can come back, all kinds of new jazz. And then in about 2 weeks, we're going to do one about the Attitude Era, the Monday Night Wars with Matt Jones and Xavier Michaels at the same time. And we'll have a nice little round discussion about that. But in any event, the title of this video is CM Punk Overrated. Now, I know this ain't going to be a really popular video because a lot of you do like CM Punk, and I know that majority of you are probably not going to agree with me, and that's okay. That's perfectly fine. But I'm going to tell you this much. This is the reason why I used to be a fan of Punk. Like, I used to like Punk. When he first came on, I liked him in Ring of Honor. I liked him when he first came on the scene in WWE, when he was in the ECW brand. I liked him when he was having his own little group and shaved his head and all that. When he had the new Nexus and everything, I actually thought Punk was very good in the ring. I thought Punk was very good on the mic, and I still think Punk's good on the mic. My problem with him is this: I will never respect a guy who bounced on his fans because he felt he was holier than thou. He will never be at the level of the people that he believes that he should be in the company of: The Rock, Austin, Taker, Michaels, Flair, Hogan, etc. He was a great talent, but not an all-time great talent. He needs to accept it and move on. And here's the thing, too. Punk was a product of having Paul Heyman, just like Brock Lesnar is. Punk was just a fade. Hence why he came back and the needle went backwards. Dude vanished for almost a decade because he was selfish and wanted everything his way. Guy can give two shits about the fans. So, yeah, I'm going to send this out to somebody here real quick. Just give me a second. But yeah, I think the Punk is a very self-absorbed individual. I really think that Punk is not as great as he thinks. And we're going to explain that here in a few minutes. When I get Poston coming in here, the Prodigal Heel will be joining me in just a few minutes. But yeah, those comments that I read right there were not from me. These were actually wrestling fans who, on some of these dirt sheets, that are actually getting tired of them always posting about AEW, CM Punk, AEW. Punk is not a needle mover. And you can say what you want about that. The needle hasn't moved that much since Punk has come back. Now, Punk took his ball and he went home. That is the bottom line to this whole entire thing. It's Punk took his ball and he went home. Now, I know some people will say, well, Stone Cold took his ball and went home, Kev. Yes, but there's a difference with Punk and there's a difference with Austin. See, Austin took his ball and went home, but Austin came back and he righted a wrong that needed to be righted. Now, it is the Messiah, the Prodigal Heel.
What's up, man?
What's up?
Talking about that A&W wrestling, are you?
Well, I'm pretty much saying that I know it's not going to be a very popular video, but I was basically saying that CM Punk is overrated.
Yeah, well, I mean, the proof is in the pudding. He was decent for the era that he was in, but the era that he was in wasn't setting any records. You know what I'm saying?
And I know that some fans are going to come on here and say, well, you know what, Big Kev, how can you say that Punk took his ball and went home? Austin did the same thing. Yeah, but Austin had a legit reason because they were going to have him do a King of the Ring qualifying, and he was going to lose to Brock Lesnar without no build and no nothing. So if some of you want to put Austin and Punk in the same shoes, which I don't know what it is about Punk, but he seems to think that he is, he comes off as this guy who feels like that he should be in the same level as a Sting, as an Undertaker, as a Shawn Michaels, as a Triple H, and all these guys. I'm sitting there thinking he has no respect for this business because he left, took his ball and went home, and then wouldn't return their calls. And then he gets mad because they sent a FedEx telegram firing him on his wedding day. So what's he do? He goes to UFC and gets his ass kicked twice in UFC, makes a mockery of himself because he's not a Brock Lesnar, he's not a Bobby Lashley, he's not a Ken Shamrock. So for him to even think that he can get into a octagon was insane in the first place. So then he decides to join back on WWE, but he decides to join their backstage show on Fox Sports 1. And Seth Rollins calls him out. A couple guys call him out. He has an opportunity to rewrite a wrong and to get that main event at WrestleMania that he so richly wants and he feels like he deserves. But to be honest with you, at WrestleMania 29, I know the main event was The Rock and Cena 2 for the belt, but you went up against The Undertaker during the streak. That's a main event match. Am I not wrong there, Wilson?
And yeah, you're right. I mean, as far as anybody in professional wrestling today, you can take any of these independent E-Feds, your Kenny Omegas, your Young Bucks, any of these guys right here, wrestling that think that their shit don't stink, they would kill to get into a match like that with The Undertaker. I think that CM Punk is more of a fringe hipster type trend. Goes back to the video that we did, I think, on January the 6th, where we were talking about how most of these people are not really celebrities. And CM Punk is one of those guys that has it in his mind that he's a celebrity. But I guarantee you, I can go out to work and talk to anybody else, and they're not going to really have an opinion one way or the other about CM Punk. Which, to be in that category of being famous or infamous, people either really have to like you or they really have to hate you at some point for you to be considered a celebrity. And so, CM Punk is, he's one of those fringe trends that came in, and I would probably consider him to be more like Bret Hart, which means you have to be a wrestling fanatic to know exactly who Bret Hart is. You know what I'm saying? Not too many people outside of wrestling know who Bret Hart is. But if you say Hulk Hogan or The Rock or even The Undertaker or Stone Cold, they kind of transcend the sport a little bit. People know who The Undertaker is, was and is outside of wrestling. People know who Hulk Hogan is outside of wrestling. People know who Stone Cold is outside of wrestling, and The Rock, and so on. And there's really not anybody outside. There's people that have the capability. I like what WWE is doing right now. And of course, I did the video of Mickie James. She's going to be in the Females Royal Rumble as the TNA Knockout Champion. Yep. So it appears that Impact and WWE are starting to work together. This is another company, another outlet that Impact is taking advantage of. And so, when you look at AEW, and like I said, CM Punk fits perfectly into AEW because, of course, CM Punk is a lefty, trendy, Chicago hipster, left-leaning hypocrite. That's exactly what the hell he is. And and I like CM Punk whenever he was in WWE. With that being said, I like the whole voice of the voiceless and the gimmick that he was in. And to be fair, if CM Punk doesn't break that fourth wall, if he doesn't break kayfabe, he probably is just that one guy, kind of like the deal with the Jeff Hardys and all this kind of stuff. He's probably just a mid-card champion. And he doesn't get out there like that. But since he broke that fourth wall, since he went ahead and broke kayfabe and add some sort of, I guess, like a real perspective outside breaking that fourth wall storyline, he did do some good promos. He did some groundbreaking promos, but I don't think that it was enough to put him on that level of where he's going to be a game changer to bring in. I think Sting was definitely the biggest signing that AEW has had. I don't think that that's Daniel Bryan, and I don't think it's CM Punk. And so, yeah, I think that you're totally 110% right whenever it's a fair comparison. CM Punk is definitely overrated, particularly in the AEW, because he's with AEW and look what he's done.
You know what's interesting, Post, and we talked about this, but I was actually excited when I found out that Punk signed him to AEW and he was going to debut on Dynamite. I was curious to see what he was going to say. Like, I watched it. I was curious to see what he was going to say, and it disappointed me. And it really lackluster, because I was hoping he was going to do another pipe bomb. I thought he was going to come in there and start name dropping people, name dropping WWE, go off on a bunch of people. But no, he didn't do that. And he missed the mark on that one big time. And now he's in a feud with MJF, and MJF is killing him on the mic. As a matter of fact, I don't know if you caught this, Poston, but on their last show on Dynamite, which is now on TBS now, yeah, I saw a little clip of him and MJF. MJF said, "Hey, you know what I do? Maybe I should go to the other company and main event at WrestleMania because you couldn't."
Yeah, and that's the thing, is that when you look at it, right, I think that they dropped the ball with CM Punk now. Unlike you, I had already heard the pipe bomb promos. So those would have been old hat anyways, and that seems to be something that AEW does quite a bit, is take these shots at WWE without really ultimately setting up a coherent product to begin with. So I mean, it was always, attributed as an indie wrestling federation pretty much from the get-go. And, if they would have brought CM Punk in maybe a little bit sooner, I think it could have been a lot better. But CM Punk, I think, waited until everybody else knows you strike when the iron's hot. And CM Punk struck when the iron's cold. After he was already past that momentum that he had, that, even people would remember him. And so, to me personally, I think that, and CM Punk has mentioned this with him and Adam Cole and Daniel Bryan being like the NWO coming into WCW, but this wasn't anything like the NWO coming into WCW. The NWO were heels, and I thought that they should have brought CM Punk in as a heel and established a whole new kind of character that he could have developed as a heel. And I thought that, putting him into a stable would have worked out the best for CM Punk, and could have really reintroduced CM Punk to this new fan base. At the same time, everybody else would have been tuning in to see exactly how they were going to use CM Punk, much like everybody tuned in to see how they were going to use Sting. And the sheer fact that you're trying to put over what I would probably consider a cruiserweight in Darby Allin, that didn't make much sense. Nobody was going to bring in Scott Hall to try and put over Rey Mysterio. That wouldn't have made any sense. Rey Mysterio was a good, cruiserweight champion, a good mid-card champion, but everybody wanted to see, at first Scott Hall and Kevin Nash go against Hulk Hogan, and then they wanted to bring in a Goldberg, and these are the guys that brought in the money. And ultimately, unfortunately, these guys that are currently in the business, like Tony Khan, not so much on WWE side, because we see that WWE totally understands how this doesn't market to the casual fan. That's why they're introducing more of that, Roman Reigns and Brock Lesnar type stuff, and they're teasing a Bobby Lashley and Brock Lesnar potential match. And we could see how somebody like me would be interested in seeing that. Why I'm keeping a close eye on WWE right now.
It's officially happening at the Royal Rumble. Brock Lesnar versus Bobby Lashley for the WWE Championship.
And that there's going to be some sort of, there's going to be some sort of interference probably, especially with the way that they're teasing it with Roman Reigns and Brock Lesnar. It's, you could see that there's some potential there. And, the A&W wrestling fans and these independent fans can sit there and miss the mark all they want to on Bobby Lashley and do video after video saying, oh, how boring he is. But I guarantee you that Bobby Lashley, Brock Lesnar, Roman Reigns, these are the guys that actual casual fans are going to be more interested in. And like I said, we could start to see the groundwork being laid of all these wrestling companies. Are starting to understand that they're going to have to start working together a little bit more, and they need to start breaking off into regions again and building up multiple superstars and stop trying to, nationalize, I guess, the business is what they're trying to do. They're trying to nationalize it. And, unfortunately, we could see exactly how one federation it's going to kill it kills an industry when you take out the competition. And you try to nationalize everything. And so I think that they're starting to understand that now, and that's why you have WWE working with Impact. You have Impact working with essentially, I think it was they've been working with AEW. They've been working with NWA. They've been working with WWE and AAA. And there's no telling. So, I mean, there's, they could bring in these guys and get these guys some sort of promotion and let them go back, and then they can rebuild up a territory-like system where they can potentially start to turn around the business and bring in more interest.
To be honest with you, we were talking about WWE has worked with Impact before, like especially when the Hardys re-signed. They were doing a documentary on the network, and they got some Impact gave them some clips to use and stuff like that. And and they've always said that WWE has always said they're open for business. They're open to do stuff with other people. To be honest with you, I would love for them to go back to the territory and going back, and I would love to see Roman Reigns inside an Impact Wrestling ring looking dead straight at Moose. And basically like saying, okay, you think you're a champion? Well, you're a champion in a small pond. Look where I'm at. And then have Moose come on SmackDown and be like, you know what? Fine, let's do it. And, I do appreciate everything that Hogan and Vince McMahon has done for this business. I do know that Andre Colville is not a fan of Vince for taking away the territories and everything like that. But Hogan did make wrestling what it is today, but wrestling's not where it was when me and you were sitting there watching it and enjoying it. And
I think that, I never was a big Hogan fan. My cousin was, but I wasn't.
Mm-hmm.
I was a fan of the Von Erichs, of course.
Right.
Bruiser Brody's and the Missing Link, and
I would think you were a fan of the Freebirds, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I like those entertainers. And to be honest with you, after that company went out of business, I didn't even watch wrestling for years. So that's why I wasn't even familiar with like your Bret Hart era and your Shawn Michaels era. I didn't really start watching it again until really till the NWO, and then that's whenever I was more introduced and I would always go against Hogan anyways. But that's whenever I was pulled back in, was whenever Hogan turned heel, actually. And yeah, that's what really kind of brought me back in. And then from there, I went into like liking WWE or WWF at the time. And actually, my favorite wasn't Stone Cold; it was The Rock. So I started watching it more to see what The Rock was going to do, and then it was back and forth between those two. But I knew that after Vince, I kind of saw the writing on the wall whenever Vince bought WCW, that wrestling was probably destined, especially how bad the invasion angle was. It wasn't going to be that great for in about 10 more years. I knew it. I didn't want to admit it, but I knew it. But like now, we're in a whole other era where they're trying to build up. They're trying to get more interest back in to wrestling, and this is the one thing that I said whenever I was doing my TNA Revolution, was that TNA had a full card. So you had your guys like Moose, Bobby Lashley, EC3, you had your heavyweight division and whatnot, and then you had your X division, which was kind of like your mid-carders and your cruiserweight guys. And then you had a hell of a knockouts division. You had a women's division. I still say that Impact has the best women's division. And they did a lot to be honest with you, while all these people that are AEW fans now were, WWE fans shitting on the TNA product at the time. I think that Billy Corrigan had really revitalized and interject a fresh new perspective, which they still, regardless of what all these people say, they still use a lot of this stuff today. And it was ahead of its time. I think that a lot of the wrestling fans at the time, they couldn't understand it, but now you look at where we're at today, and they're trying to use this same formula to some degrees to actually bring interest back in. I think that right now WWE is probably really right now doing the best work as far as wrestling goes. Right now, you got to look at WWE and what they're doing, and they're really turning it around. I'm kind of impressed with what they're doing right now.
Oh, by the way, Poston, those fans that come out there, what, Poston? WWE's over there firing a bunch of people. How can you say they're doing good?
Yeah, certainly. You're not a revenue generator, because if you were a revenue generator for the business, then WWE wouldn't be laying off all these little, mid-carders and indie-fed darlings that you love so much. AEW would actually turn a profit. ROH wouldn't be closing down its doors. You know what I'm saying? The sheer fact that these companies catered to a very, very small margin of wrestling fans. And definitely they're not the old traditional wrestling fans. They were the hipster, millennial, trendy. And this was one thing that I told that commentator guy. I forget what his name was, but I used to watch a lot of his videos because he's a great commentator. But good mic work is the same thing that I told him. WWE trying to bring in these what you would call pop culture things that they were trying to implement into their product. It was going to have the reverse effect on their audience, and that's exactly what happened. So whenever they were trying to cater to pop culture, they were trying to cater to pop culture more than they were to the wrestling fan. Yep. And that's ultimately whenever WWE their ratings started to plummet because they were marketing to these various pop culture fans, these hipster, trendy millennials and whatnot, thinking, oh, yeah, we're going to be able to bring in a whole new fan base and replace our wrestling fan base who's going to, have a standard for our product. We can just go ahead and feed these people shit, keep them in the dark, and they won't know any better. And it didn't work out that way. The NFL is learning the same thing, and, you plan on having, but they're learning the same thing. I mean, how many times do we got to hear these stories that nobody cares about? But you hear about the Deshaun Watson sexual assault cases. And then you hear about the Henry Ruggs DWI thing. And then they have the whole Aaron Rodgers, a passport thing or fake VAXX ID thing. And then, just before that, you had the Colin Kaepernick kneeling, and you had the Tom Brady deflating footballs and all these ridiculous stories. And so, eventually people like me are not going to be so, we're not going to be so interested in watching, like I don't watch the NFL anymore. Because I'm always, you'll have Antonio Brown take off his shoulder pads and his shirt and do some jumping jacks to put on his little shows for these what I would like to sit there and call these hipster, trendy, just to give somebody something to talk about, so the shit posters. And so, yeah, it gets to be less about the sport and more about these personalities. And I'm just not interested in it. WWE, on the other hand, they went back to a formula that's more conducive for the wrestling fan.
Before we get back into Punk, there is a guy on NXT 2.0 who's now the new NXT champion, and his name is Braun Breaker. But he is the son of Rick Steiner and the nephew of Big Papa Pump. And when he's a mixture of both of them. Like the way he talks reminds me of Scott. The way he wrestles reminds me of Scott and Rick at the same time. And I think it's really cool that they are going into those generational things and bringing in people like that. And I think that is where they should be at in the future.
Well, we know that a lot of these guys back in the days, back whenever wrestling was still developing and really at the same time, they were really just, particularly in the golden age, back in the 80s, when they were trying to still accumulate this fan base, and all of a sudden, it was really starting to blow up. You had a lot of guys like Bruiser Brody and, guys like that would protect the business. They would, haze people out that didn't belong. And I guarantee you a majority of these guys, guys like CM Punk, certain guys, probably like the Young Bucks and stuff, probably wouldn't have made it. They wouldn't have had that, they would have definitely been hazed out by this point in time. And I think
the Young Bucks are overrated too. And the fact that they do the same fucking moves every fucking match is really insane to me. And I mean, I didn't sorry to interrupt you there, Bolson, but I just the Young Bucks are one team that I see, and they always do that super kick thing. They always do the same old stuff. And if they were to go up against a tag team back in the day, like the Hart Foundation or even the Rockers or Demolition or the Road Warriors, they'd get killed.
I mean, you go back and listen to The Undertaker talk about his matches with Bruiser Brody. Yep. And whenever he made a mistake, Bruiser was going to make him pay for that mistake. So he understood. And then, and he even talked about it. He's like, yeah, I was green whenever I come back out. And Bruiser hit him in the back. He said it sounded like a shotgun. And I went back and watched that match just because he was sitting there talking about it. Texas Red versus Bruiser Brody. And, those guys were there and they would protect, and you had men that would wrestle back then. You know what I'm saying? Those were men that wrestled back then. I can't see anybody like, the New Days. They would be jobbers. They wouldn't be these, you wouldn't have And I think that Biggie Langston is probably the most legitimate member in New Day. Don't get me wrong. But with this character and these, flamboyant, fucking characters that they put on them, they would be jobbers. They would be Disco Inferno. They would be like, not Alex Riley, but Alex Stone. They would be like those guys. And, you're, real believable guys that had some sort of masculinity. They were always at the top. A guy like Cody Rhodes would not be in that little slot that he's in right now. I think that he would have probably been hazed out of the business too. A lot of these guys that are in the business right now would have been hazed out. But that's not the way the business is set up today. It's set up more to cater to these guys, that virtue signal and get behind these guys. And like I said, I think that guys like EC3 are totally slept on. Could you imagine if you replace CM Punk with a guy like EC3 and then have them have MJF and EC3 go at it? It would probably be a totally different story, because while I don't think that EC3 is decent on the mic, but and MJF would probably be a lot better than EC3 on the mic. He would probably be definitely, but EC3 would bring in that physical aspect of the match. You know what I'm saying? And so, there's a lot of those guys that get overlooked, particularly by these indie fed guys.
What's interesting about this thing with Punk is I went back, before I did this video, I went back and I watched his feud with The Rock from the Royal Rumble to Elimination Chamber in 2013. And this was the PG version of The Rock, and The Rock was owning him on the mic. Each time they were doing it, he was owning Punk. Now, did Punk carry him in that match at the Royal Rumble? Yeah, absolutely. Because The Rock wasn't, he was a lot bigger. He wasn't really much in ring shape like he should have been. But at the same time, that feud, I go back to 2013. The Punk faced The Rock. He faced John Cena, The Rock, John Cena. He faced The Undertaker at WrestleMania. And then at SummerSlam, he faced Brock Lesnar. And had that Paul Heyman storyline in there in the middle of it. And I'm sitting there thinking, why are you bitching? You got a chance to face a legend in The Rock, a legend in Undertaker, and a legend in Brock Lesnar. To me, I would think that was a good fucking year for me.
But you look at CM Punk, and I think that really a lot of people will sit there and say that his best work was with John Cena. Actually, I think that a lot of his best work was with Triple H, actually. And that was another one that he bitched about. But, I think that a lot of that work was pretty decent. I thought that, of course, the John Cena was the one that put him on the map. And outside of that, he did some good work with The Undertaker. I thought that his feud with The Undertaker was pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
But, yeah, he's one of those guys that never really had to pay his due as far as, inside a main event, inside the WWE. Inside it's always been, he was always entitled. He came in, he was being pushed. He even admits it. He was given a lot of these brass rings coming in.
Yeah.
And, he never really had to go through a lot of the stuff that people had to go through back in the 80s and the 90s whenever they were coming into wrestling. A lot of that had changed. It's kind of like being in the military. I don't know. I've heard that some of this stuff, but used to, whenever you fucked up, you got your ass tore up, and there was a lot of hazing and stuff like that. Then they came out with this stress card, right? Where if you feel stressed, you can go ahead and give this stress card out. And then they have to give you like, what is it? I don't know how many however long it is, they have to leave you alone. And so, and them lowering the physical standards for the military. And I feel like that's what they did, not just necessarily just for CM Punk, but for a lot of the guys that were coming in. They lowered that bar for them to make it obtainable so they could get more guys in. But these guys would never develop into, it's, kind of like what we're looking at today, where, I don't know who it was, if it was you that were sitting there saying that, oh, yeah, they'll hire this 20-year-old guy because they're like, oh, he's got more longevity and he'll work there longer. They'll come in, they'll work for a couple of months, and then they quit because they don't want to work there in the first place. They just come there to go ahead and catch up on bills and whatnot. Whereas the, later 30 and old 40-year-old guys, you know what I'm saying? Guys in our age range, we're more dependable and more reliable. We understand. And a lot of these younger guys, and don't get me wrong, I was probably the same way whenever I was in my 20s, but they're not going to be as dependable. So, they really lowered the bar for a lot of these guys. So, I meant a lot of CM Punk's success. He rightfully he broke kayfabe. He got on the map. You can call it cheap. I know that certain people that are praising him now did say it was cheap. But with that being said, he got his name on the map. He got into a few good storylines, a few good angles. But outside of that, like I said, after he left, he never did anything with that. He went to UFC. He ended up losing the 2 matches. He never, I don't even think that he really cared about wrestling. Because like I said, if he cared about professional wrestling, if he cared about the business, he would have immediately went back to TNA. TNA would have definitely broke out the checkbook. The guy could have wrote his own ticket, and he could have came in, and probably immediately become a world heavyweight champion. To now where he's going to wait. He's going to wait. And then I'm sure that fucking Tony Khan called him up with these vision of sugar plums that they're going to reinvent the Monday Night Wars. And I wouldn't be surprised if at some point Vince is actually funding to a degree the AEW thing to, maybe even potentially put ROH out of business and to develop his own version of ROH. I wouldn't be surprised if there isn't something to that. But CM Punk jumped at it, and I think that the reason why CM Punk, Daniel Bryan, went to AEW is because they're under the impression that it's going to be ROH 2.0, and that they're going to have all this control, and they're going to be able to relive their glory days. And those days are gone. Your ROH days are gone. This is a whole new crop of talent. We can tell by the shows that they put on that it's not these guys don't work together real well. The matches are not really well coordinated. You see a lot of botches. I know you've showed many of them, and it's just I don't know. I don't know what they think they're going to get out of this. But the history of the Khans, and I understand the history of the Khans, and judging by their prior what you would call failures and repeated failures right now, there's not a lot of hope for a Khan-led AEW wrestling. I think that the marketing, the strategy, the everything behind it. Everybody told you get woke and go broke. And then I think Zargon made a video basically saying how stupid Tony Khan was trying to market this to soy latte drinking leftists, trying to do all this cringe leftist bullshit. And, now with Big Swolt leaving, how it's kind of coming back to bite him in the ass. And so what's he going to do? He's stuck in a catch-22. You can't go and mock her for that because this is the people that you've been trying to appeal to this whole fucking time. At the same time, she's going to sit there and say that you're some sort of bigot of some sort. You know what I'm saying? So he's in that catch-22 right now. So
yeah, I was watching the Busted Open radio or Buster Open, whatever I forgot how to pronounce it because it's been a while since but I was reading a little bit of what Bully Ray, because Bully Ray is a panelist on there, and Bully Ray was talking about that feud between MJF and Punk, and he pretty much said that last promo that MJF, you could literally see, and he is right. You go back and watch it, posted if you want to on YouTube, but there is a clip where you could legitimately see Punk getting pissed off. And MJF is getting under his skin. I don't know if it's really scripted or for that to happen, or they're really going at it no holds barred on the mic. But when MJF said, well, maybe I'll go to the place where you couldn't main event at WrestleMania at, and maybe I'll go and main event it. You know, that right there was a really good shot in the arm. And now, as far as these guys going to AEW, like Brian and Punk and Adam Cole, the only one that's making any noise, who's actually doing really well, is actually Daniel Bryan.
To be honest with you, I haven't even covered any of the AEW ratings just because I really haven't had that much interest in AEW or wrestling as a whole as of late. So, I've been, doing other shit really at the end of the day. And, it says a lot about a company. See, like I said, I guess it's good for Daniel Bryan. I think that Daniel Bryan I think first off, Daniel Bryan should be heel. I think that's whenever he did his best work was as a heel. Even whenever he did turn heel again and he had his little, his little green hemp championship belt. I thought that was actually pretty good shit from Daniel Bryan. So I think that Daniel Bryan could be a transitional champion. I don't think that he's going to be the guy that's going to be the top draw. But I think that there's, potential there. I'm not saying that he's horrible.
Right.
But it's not going to be enough to bring me in. I'm not going to stop watching a Bobby Lashley versus Brock Lesnar match to tune into the Daniel Bryan thing. And, essentially, I'd probably rather watch some of the more female matches on WWE than maybe even that. But and it just depends on who's there. Like, you have Mickie James coming in, and there's some potential there. There's some longevity there. There's actually a lot of good female wrestlers out there. A lot of them that were brought in from Impact. And so, like, you have your Tessa Blanchards and stuff like that. And I'm not sure if, watching the same old routine and the same old monotonous spot fest wrestling, where it's all spot fest with false finishers, and you can predict it. I think that they said that the Hangman Adam Page Daniel Bryan match lasted an hour, and the AEW fans were chanting, "We want more." I can guarantee you that I can probably say that there was at least 3 or 4 false finishers in that match, and probably more. Probably about 7 of them false finishers in that match. But and I don't know because I didn't watch it. But it's monotonous. It's monotonous. It's I've tried to watch some of the stuff on there, and I even had to go back and watch some of the Big Swole stuff because everybody talked about how great she was. Zargon was bragging on how athletic and great she was, and I don't know, honestly. She could be, maybe she is. I honestly don't know because AEW is such a bad metric to use. And that was one thing because Andre said that she was uncoordinated and her matches look a little off. And it's like I told Andre, I said, well, that's like every AEW match. They're all uncoordinated and a little off. So it's hard to judge how talented a wrestler may be in AEW, just simply because they're in AEW and all their matches look a little like that.
What's interesting too, Paul. So when I did that interview with that wrestler, superstar Xavier Michaels, he's in that same age range as us, and he loves the territories. And we were talking about that during the interview, and I said to him, and he said the one thing he hates about AEW is they're always doing that Canadian destroyer move. And he said it was famous once in TNA from Petey Williams, and then it was like everybody in the world now is doing that move. It's almost like every move now has lost its touch. I mean, I understand the false finishes. You save those for the pay-per-view for something like that because Rock and Austin made it famous. But, and Hogan made it famous for kicking out and doing that whole Hogan up stuff and all that. But when you see it on every single match, false finish after false finish, and the punches are not even connected. Say what you want about Bret Hart. Bret Hart had a really good punch to him. Like his punches look like they actually connected with somebody. Nowadays, and I'm even saying with WWE too, you see these punches not connecting, and you see like they're just doing all these false finishes. They're flipping all over the place, and it's like what Stone Cold said recently. These wrestlers, these guys, these men and women need to learn to slow it down, tell a story in the ring. But that's how guys like Austin and Undertaker were taught to do. When I did wrestling back then, I was taught to do that. I was taught to slow it down, tell a story. Don't try to get all your offense in at one point, because if you do that, they're going to get tired of you because they're like, okay, well, we've seen his moveset now.
Yeah, and I'll tell you another thing that they do quite a bit, and that's the super kick. Holy shit. Yep. They do that so much that it ultimately it loses. I mean, bring back the Iron Claw, because it's not a familiar move. It used to be pretty popular back in the 80s, and not a lot of people were, about the 90s, it kind of went away. And
I watched some old Undertaker clips when he was first, like around 91, 92, when he was a heel. He was doing some of those claw moves. I went back and watched some of it.
Yeah, and it's effective. It looks, it actually hurts. It really does. I've had it put on me before, and especially if you know how to do it. Yeah, it definitely can be debilitating. Where with that being said, the Von Erichs used to do that shit all the time, and it used to be pretty popular back in the 80s. And then all of a sudden in the 90s, it kind of, like in the early 90s, it's not like the sharpshooter, which, in the late 90s, everybody was doing the sharpshooter for a little while, but it wasn't like to the same effect. That was always a special move. Now you have the super kicks and these Canadian destroyers and stuff like that, and they're doing it every 5 minutes. You know what I'm saying? And it's like everybody's trying to do it just to show that they can do it. And it's like, okay, well, I'm not really interested in this. I'm going to flip the channel. See if, what's that, Chicago Fire is on, or see if, there's a good hockey game on, or see if there's something else other than this that's on. Because outside of maybe a few people, like you said, MJF, Eli Drake or LA Knight, guys like EC3, that could really tell a story on the mic, then they got to deliver in the ring. And like I said, that's where MJF loses me. I think that he does a little too much. Like MJF should be, really trying to emulate a Ric Flair type of moveset. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Or Dean Malenko would be a good one too. That a tech savvy type thing, instead of doing cartwheels and shit in the ring, because he there's just so much of that, and it looks like he's just trying to play to this. And the kid has potential, but he just he's doing cartwheels and he's doing these ridiculous matches with otherwise cruiserweights and whatnot. And there's nothing wrong with it. I think that, like, some of the best matches that Bobby Lashley has had was with Eddie Edwards, and Eddie Edwards.
Duke Waters is in the house saying, "How about them Cowboys?"
Oh, did they win? I didn't finish watching it.
Yeah, they did. Yeah, they did.
Nice. Yeah. But I noticed that Philadelphia was setting they didn't play Jalen Hurts, so they're getting ready. They already knew that they were going to be at the bottom of the playoff barrel. So,
right, yeah. Honestly, though, the one thing I'll say about another move that you see a lot on there now is the DDT. When Jake Roberts did it back then, it was like lights out, you're done. And you're starting to see, you're starting to see a lot of these moves being done over and over again. And it's just, I mean, I'm okay with Becky Lynch using the rock bottom because she actually took the time to call the Rock and say, "Hey, can I use this in my own variation?" And he said, "Yeah, sure, go ahead." And I was okay with Kevin Owens using the stunner because he asked Austin. If you ask the person who created it, I'm okay with it. But if you're one of those people who are not asking and you're just doing like super kick after super kick after super kick, I'm like, damn, if I was Shawn Michaels, I would patent that motherfucker and basically make them pay him every time they do it.
yeah, I mean, and there's other moves that people could use. I mean, and we put up 50 burgers. Nice.
Oh.
But
Well, to be honest with you, Duke, you did face an Eagles team that had like 9 or 10 players inactive.
Is Duke going to be on your little playoff board next week, on next Friday?
Yeah, I've been trying to get him on there. I want to get him on here. I think he would have to be on the evening or day. I don't know. I have to ask him.
Yeah. I'll definitely be on your little playoff panel though next Friday.
Wait, here's something too. And I said to myself, if I do something with the wrestling show, if I do get back into the ring after all this time, I think what I might do, and I might do this for you, I might bring back the claw.
Yeah, bring that motherfucker back, dude. It's a very underrated move. And that used to be like whenever I would design a character on one of these WWE games, they had the Iron Claw on there. And so whenever I create a character for myself, that would be my finishing move.
When I created that character for you, your finishing move was the claw.
Yeah, that's always been my favorite move right there, was the Iron Claw. Put that Iron Claw on somebody. I remember whenever went back and saw whenever Kerry put that Iron Claw on the missing link. And I don't know how much effect it would have on the missing link, because the missing link would beat his head on the damn ring post every time before he got in the ring. So it's not like, you have to do a lot of work to get that guy. But yeah, I mean, that's a very, very, you should definitely bring that one back, man.
I'm thinking about bringing more of an old school methodical style back. And I feel like that's something that's been missing. Is really missing is the old school methodical. Now I could tell you right now, if I was ever in a tag team with if I was in a tag team with Remington, me and him would kill people.
Yeah, I think that another thing that needs to be brought back is the tornado punch that Kerry used to do. You remember that tornado punch?
Oh my gosh, yes, I remember that.
He'd always sit there and do those punches, and then he would do that tornado punch, and then he'd put the Iron Claw on your ass, and that was it. After that, you knew it was over. There was none of these false finishers. I'm going to go ahead and get in my... No, that was it. Whenever Kerry Von Erich put that Iron Claw, you could just go ahead and call the match.
People can say what they want about John Cena, and I know he have in the past too, but I know he only had what everybody calls the 5 moves of doom, but to be honest with you, that's all he needed.
I'll be honest with you. Some of these guys only have like 2 or 3 moves. It's like the Frankensteiner, the super kick, like you said, the Canadian Destroyer, and then that could be it. And then, just jumping off the goddamn turnbuckle. It seems to be it.
I like the old school submission moves, and I watched a little bit of that day one pay-per-view, and I watched it to see Lashley and Lesnar in the same ring. And when Lashley speared him through the barricade, and then he put the hurt lock on Lesnar, Lesnar was going down until Big E interrupted. So,
Yeah.
so I'm sitting there thinking, I'm liking this new Brock Lesnar too. And as I was saying in that one video I did the other day, I was like, I'm liking this new Brock Lesnar, the new kind of like, hey, I got the ponytail, I'm a country boy, this is who I am.
I think it seemed, and this is the way it feels to me. It's like an old man Brock, because you knew Brock Lesnar whenever he came in, he was young and green as hell, and he was just physically, superior to everybody else. He's still physically superior, you know what I'm saying? However, now he's got that old man beard, he's got that ponytail, and he's just got that look of a guy who's like, I'm here. I know I've got the experience now. I have the physicality now. And I'm just going to go in and I'm going to, basically wreck shit. I think that this is actually probably one of the more interesting, because to be fair, I never was a big Brock Lesnar fan. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But I respected what he could do in the ring. And you don't have to be a fan of a particular, wrestler to still be interested in what, is somebody going to beat this guy? And, that's how he has his drawing power, is who can beat Brock Lesnar. And whenever they booked him, I wanted The Rock to beat him. And, he ended up beating The Rock. So he's that guy that can get over people, much like The Undertaker. And AEW doesn't have anybody like that. It certainly isn't Sting, or it certainly isn't CM Punk. Although I think that a CM Punk Sting match would have been a hell of a lot better if they would have built it properly. Don't just bring him in, but bring him in as a heel and then build up to CM Punk versus Sting. That could have potentially been better than what they did. But, it's Tony Khan. He's not really aware of, he's just not really aware of that stuff. He almost books it like an E-Fed, and a lot of people still compare AEW much to Tony Khan's E-Fed.
To be honest with you, though, they do remind me of like an E-Fed, and I remember competing with some other people back in the day when they had their E-Feds, and they were always having all these false finishes, all these stuff going on over and over and over again. And I'm just like, I always wanted to have a story that I follow. And I know some people are pissed because Brock won the belt from Big E and everything like that, but I have to give WWE credit for their long-term booking here. And they still are doing the whole Paul Heyman in the middle with him and Roman Reigns, and we're getting Brock and Bobby Lashley at the Rumble. And I mean, even though I wanted to see that at WrestleMania instead, this will be the first time I'm actually excited about watching their pay-per-view.
I'll be honest, I think the only time I lost an E-Fed was to Bearstown. But to be honest with you, I was always the mid-card guy anyways. But I think that was, I was always kind of like to a degree protected, but I wasn't that demanding. So if anybody wants to know why I left said E-Fed or something like that, it wasn't because I didn't get a title or anything. I wasn't CM Punkish about it. So, yeah. I mean, I wasn't over there saying, you need to put the title on me, Kev. I want the Universal, WWE. I want all your titles ever. No, I just, either didn't have the time to do it or, something would happen. A lot of these E-Feds really kind of just, you'd get in on an E-Fed and then something would happen and it would close down. And I was mainly on either yours or Dark Horse's E-Fed.
And there'd be drama.
Yeah, there'd be some drama backstage or something like that. And then the channel would shut down. So, yeah.
Yeah, to be honest with you, though, when we were talking about Punk earlier, there's someone that me and you know in particular. When Punk went to Punk's first match in UFC, this guy was talking mad shit about CM Punk, and then when Punk came back, he was praising AEW.
Oh yeah, and like for me, this said person sent me the CM Punk, and to be honest with you, I did, I had to get up and go to work the next day, so it's probably I really wasn't interested, and plus like I said, I wasn't I was
Yeah, right.
I was trying to do other stuff at the same time, and whenever he sent that promo to me, I was like, oh, okay, well, this wasn't that good, and so got mad at me, but it wasn't great, and then I went back and I watched his second promo that he did for AEW, thinking maybe okay, maybe he'll the second promo was even worse, and then these guys are putting out the little off the air thing with him and Christian Cage, and I'm just rolling my eyes because it's like, oh, okay, well, I don't care. I honestly don't care, and basically, you know, um, this is that problem that AEW marketing. AEW has no marketing. I'll just go in there and say it. But that AEW marketing that says, well, if you don't like it, shut the fuck up. And, that's somebody who's trying to invest into your product. And, you go around, you ban them from, this is the same thing with the Democrats. This is their whole mentality is if you don't agree with us, you can't be tolerated, even though they'll call you the bigot. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
And anybody who's trying to invest in the product at all, you should be more accommodating to. Somebody's going to shit on your product. They're going to say it's not that good. Make your product better. And if it's just bogus feedback, if they're just haters, then you can honestly ignore that. But whenever somebody's giving, actual criticism and, it hits a little close to home, instead of, I don't know, trying to censor their critique of what you're doing wrong, instead of doing that, go ahead and embrace it and try to fix it and work on it and do it better. Every job that I've ever had, I wasn't perfect at every aspect of every job. Actually, some of them I quite sucked at. And sucked at. But I would work at it until I got better at it. You know what I'm saying? Till I got more efficient at it. And I think that this is one of the things that is ultimately the reason why AEW is never going to be a successful company.
Now, the one thing I will give AEW credit for, and yes, people, I'm giving AEW a little bit of credit here. I like how they done since Sting has been a part of their roster. They're allowing Sting to be more himself than he was in WWE. So I will give AEW credit on that.
Well, WWE lowered that bar so low that it would be impossible for them to do worse
Right.
for Sting than WWE. So it, not really saying a lot. Of course, I do think that Sting was better in TNA.
Yeah.
But, it is what it is. There's not really a lot that Sting has in the way of how this product was rushed. There's not a lot that Sting can work with because a lot of these guys, they're not necessarily green to the business, but they're green working with each other. They're from different companies. And so everybody is trying to, I guess, find a place on this card of where they're going to fit at. So you have so many people competing to be, the Ric Flairs and the Arn Andersons and the Four Horsemen and the Stings and the Lex Lugers, and they're trying to fill out those roster spots. But everybody is kind of, they drag it out, and they're trying to. I mean, this is absolutely. You could tell that this is what happens whenever you allow extreme leftists, because they believe, oh, everybody deserves to be the number one, and not everybody could be the top spot. And it takes many of these, you need a Disco Inferno. You know, you need a Dean Malenko, and you need a Hulk Hogan. You know, you need a full roster like that, and they need to know their place. And if they don't know their place, then you're just getting a fucking conundrum, basically. And so, yeah, I think that this is what AEW runs into time and time again. I think that guys like CM Punk, they're, you know, he thinks that, oh yeah, you know, I've been on WWE. I was a WWE champion. I had the one good storyline. I got my name out there, which you got trending. You're not a celebrity. You just got trending. And, you know, I was, you know, trending there for a little while. So of course, and then you have guys like MJF who have the talent, but are, you know, he's good on the mic, but you know, that's only going to get you so far. You need to be, you know, you need to develop a more, I guess, applicable move set than, you know, what you're doing right now, because, you know, he's really, to me, he's kind of more like the Miz than he is a Ric Flair at this point. You want to be more like Ric Flair, you know. Stop doing those ridiculous, you know, that he does, what was it that he done? And I had to roll my eyes, but he was doing that test of strength where he was, you know, grasping, and he was pushing down Darby Allin down to the ground, and then Darby Allin fought his way back up, and it's like, oh, this is stupid. It's a waste of my time, you know.
Yeah.
I wanted to see how he did in the ring. That's why I watched it. It's kind of like Rosemary. Rosemary was very talented on the mic. But I'm like, yeah, you know, she's really, really good on the mic, but I bet you she sucks in the ring. And then she had her little feud at the time. Now her matches don't look like this. But she had her little match with the Nia, I can't think of her name now.
Mia Yim?
Yeah. And those matches were really, really good. And I'm like, oh, well, she is definitely a well-rounded wrestler. So kudos to you. And so, yeah, you know, the hardcore grunge matches that she would do, I was like, yeah, I was really, really impressed. And so, you know, that's what MJF needs to do. He needs to be, I think that, you know, the Ric Flair or like the Dean Malenkos and stuff like that, that's why he needs to develop his, and then really be a showboat, really be a show off with it. You know what I'm saying? Like Ric Flair used to do. And be less like what the, you know, I guess, high flyer spot monkeys is what Matt Hardy used to call them. But, yeah, needs to do more of that and less of the whole spot fest, you know?
Well, I will say this about, before I end the video, I will say this about Punk. That promo he did when he came to AEW, the fact that he didn't give credit to WWE for the reason why he's getting that $3 million deal a year and a plus incentive, the reason why you got that deal is not because you were a part of Ring of Honor. You got that because you did a pipe bomb at WWE and you made yourself famous.
That's exactly why.
So for you not to at least thank WWE for giving you that opportunity, you could tell the man is still bitter. He's still bitter after 7 years. And, you know, I guarantee you, if AEW wasn't even in business, if Vince called him and said, hey, man, how about if you come back for $5 million a year? If you fans think that Punk wouldn't take that, you're delusional.
And with what WWE is doing right now, you know, he would definitely get some more, because, you know, people that tune in to see Bobby Lashley and Brock Lesnar fight are going to come in and they're going to say, hey, CM Punk, you know, because like I said, I still remember guys like Juventud Guerrero, but I watched WWE to see if Sting would beat Hogan. But I would like the matches with Juventud and, say, Chris Jericho. You know, that's how Chris Jericho, you know, if Kevin Nash, Scott Hall, Hulk Hogan, Goldberg are not drawing in the fans, then nobody probably knows or cares who Chris Jericho is. But the reason why Chris Jericho got over is because he was a solid performer. He was a good talker on the mic, and people that tuned in to see Hogan, Hall, and Nash fight Goldberg, Sting, and Luger, um, they were, treated to seeing Chris Jericho. And then Chris Jericho and those guys that everybody had known from WCW jumped over to WWE, and they had already had some sort of marketability behind them. And so if you don't get your Rock, Stone Cold, and your Undertakers, then nobody's going to know who your X-Pacs or D'Lo Browns or anybody is, because, they're tuning in to see Stone Cold fight The Undertaker. But you're treated to a match with D'Lo Brown, with the Godfather, with X-Pac, with the Road Dogg, Jesse James, the Badass Billy Guns. And so everybody was able to get a little bit of, notoriety, publicity, where, everybody got it. With what wrestling has dilapidated down to, it's just not interesting. You don't have those captivating characters that could, sustain an audience. Now, WWE is starting to do that with the Roman Reigns, with the Bobby Lashley's, with the Brock Lesnar's. And it's going to be interesting to see how they can maybe develop into something else. Working with Impact, helping them develop their rosters, maybe they can get some names out there again. And, work with NWA and various other companies, help these companies establish their rosters and their stars. And then maybe you can get those main events again, like you had back during the days of the territories. But what AEW is doing is ultimately they're, complaining about the traditional wrestling fans and how out of touch they are, while they're not putting together a competent product to draw any kind of casual audience. So basically, they're just marketing to the same old indie fed. That's just the reason why a lot of these indie feds go under and whatnot. So it's gonna be interesting to see if WWE works with like Impact and NWA and some of these other federations, if that can't help those federations get a little bit more interest into their product, at the same time developing their roster and then working maybe independently, with WWE to, get some more interest into their products, and at the same time can contribute, build up these main event stars and stuff to ultimately maybe appear on WWE TV. I think that would help a lot. Now, I know that the AEW fans will say, well, AEW tried to do that, but AEW didn't have the the continuity. They didn't have the Tony Khan pushed it too fast. So I mean, watching a Magnus or Chris Aldis fight, say, a Kenny Omega is not going to be as appealing as watching a Chris Aldis go and fight maybe a Drew Galloway in WWE. Even though we saw it in TNA Impact, it would have a different atmosphere to it. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
And maybe WrestleMania. And so, I think that that would definitely be better for the industry. And this isn't me just marking out for WWE or anything. This is me, saying that there's more longevity there. The roster's more stable in WWE. Since they've been there and they have a longer tenure, there's more coherency in WWE than there was in AEW. So Chris Aldis showing up on an AEW show is meh, okay. But whenever Mickey James shows up into
that Women's Royal Rumble, people are going to be talking.
Exactly. And so, well, we'll go ahead and end this video. We'll let everybody know. Let us know down below in the comment section if you think CM Punk is overrated, underrated. I'm okay with you. If you don't agree with us, that's fine. That's cool. Um, we talked about some couple other things here, so let us know what you guys think in the comments down below. Go check out Poston's video that we did about January the 6th. That's on his channel. I'm surprised it's still on there. I guess YouTube hasn't taken off yet.
So am I. I backed it up on BitChute, so it's on my BitChute too.
So yeah, go check that out. And then this coming week starts the NFL playoffs. I'm going to get a big giant panel together. Poston's going to be a part of it. I'm trying to get Steven Rose and Duke Botters and a couple other guys on there, and we're going to dissect the NFL playoffs, and we'll give y'all picks about who we think is going to be in the Super Bowl. But I'm Big Kev from Big Kev's World. This is the Prodigal Heel. And you guys still, if you're going to say anything about us, it's still going to cost you money. So that's still going on, by the way.
Still. Yeah, on my Cameo.
Yeah,
Just
Cameo.
On Cameo.
Now, if you want us to do a shout out, it's going to cost you.
Yeah, just $10,000 a piece.
But I got a couple more stuff coming up lined up, so you guys are going to be excited about. I'm doing a Transformer funny thing with Transformers here soon, and I'm going to take a couple episodes and start doing voiceovers that I think that they should be saying. And then, no, this is not your kids' Transformers. This is not the Transformers I grew up with. This is a little bit of a dirtier Transformers. But any event, though, thanks for joining me, Poston, and we'll head out here, guys.